Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I want to start with this, because there is a woman on a beach in France being accosted by armed officers in uniform. The officers, incidentally, are wearing long trousers, not long sleeves, but they've got their legs fully covered. How come they're one law for the law, another law for everybody else? The woman photographed in the newspaper articles I'm referring to today, and not just newspaper articles, you can see it, of course, online, isn't wearing a burkini. A burkini, in case you didn't know, is an all-over bodysuit, a full-body swimsuit that was designed by a Lebanese-Australian woman called Aheda Zanetti and has been on sale since about 2008. She estimates she's sold about 700,000 of them. In recent days, she's sold shed loads to people who aren't Muslims. She got about 60 or 70 orders on Sunday alone. They normally get about 17 or 18 on a weekend, and all of them, she's told the Daily Telegraph, were non-Muslim. So there is at least one winner in this story, and that is the seller of the swimsuits. But what I find interesting about this story today is the fact that the woman targeted by armed officers here and told to take her clothes off. Wow. Armed officers telling a woman in a Western liberal democracy to take her clothes off at gunpoint.
Not so much the right to bear arms as the requirement. There's been a furious response to images appearing to show armed French police enforcing the ban on full-length swimming costumes known as burkinis on a beach in Nice. The Promenade des Anglais in Nice, named after the English who first bathed here in the 19th century, a slither of gravel epitomizing the glamour of the Riviera. But then, over a month ago, the promenade became the scene of a brutal extremist massacre, and the flowers are here to commemorate the 84 dead. The police are here for added security, but they're also here to patrol a new and bizarre front line in France's cultural war against extremism. That war has now focused on one item of clothing, the burkini. As of last week, the burkini is now banned on the beaches of Nice, following in the footsteps of other French cities. And here is the ban being enforced. Yesterday, this image of Siam resting with her children went viral. 4 policemen ordered her to remove her long-sleeved top and fined her for failing, quote, to respect good morals and secularism. It's not even clear whether Siam was indeed wearing a burkini. It's also not clear whose human rights the police intervention was protecting. But let's be honest, it was unlikely to enhance the security of anyone in Nice. There is so much irony and absurdity about this story, it's hard to know where to begin. On the M&S website, the burkini has sold out. And just what are the sartorial guidelines for them? One can only assume that these nuns are wedded to good morals but reject secularism. Will they now be forced to remove half their garments and pay half the fine? And Aussie lifeguards have been wearing burkinis forever against the intrusive Antipodean sun, against skin cancer. Would they be forced to strip bare on the secular beaches of France?
En fait, on est allé à la plage de Cannes.
So we went to the beach to Cannes with my family, with my children, and we were stopped by 3 police officers. And they read out a decree that had been set up by the mayor of Cannes with relation to what I was wearing, which apparently was not right. So I said, why wasn't what I was wearing correct? And the police officer told me to take off my scarf and to wear it as a bandana. And that was it. So I refused to do that. And so I was given a verbal warning on the beach because of that.
Et là, oui, effectivement, j'ai été, je suis révoltée.
Yes, I'm horrified by what happened. I'm horrified also by the behavior of people around us. There were some people that were supporting us, but there were other people who applauded the police officers and who began insulting us, and we were shocked.
Well, earlier, Musrat Zia from the Muslim Women's Network here in the UK had this to say.
Many women choose to wear something that covers them for lots of different reasons. So I don't accept that this is a Muslim uniform as such. It doesn't represent anything other than a woman's desire to wear what she wants to wear.
Just stop a minute, shall we, actually? Seriously, wherever you stand on current issues, wherever you stand on current topics, wherever you stand on terrorism, I've always made my position pretty clear. Come down as hard as you humanly can on the people responsible for it, but let's not start punishing any of the people who aren't responsible for it. That, you know, it's still, as I say these words, can't quite believe it, that has become a controversial position to hold in Britain at the moment. Let's just punish guilty people. Let's not punish innocent people. That's controversial. That makes you an apologist for terrorism, or even a sympathiser. Come down as hard as you want on the terrorists. The problem is they usually kill themselves, so our authorities are denied that pleasure. Come down as hard as you want on the guilty. Don't go after the innocent. We have allowed our country to become a place where that is now a controversial position to hold. People queuing up to describe, let's only punish the guilty, let's not punish the innocent, as being in some way appeasing or apologising for scumbag terrorists. Incredible. You know, one of the first women to go under the wheels of that truck in Nice was wearing a headscarf. These are the things you don't get told. First police officer to turn up at the Charlie Hebdo shootings, the police officer who was shot dead by the terrorists, Muslim. The security guard at the Bataclan Theatre in France, whose bravery saw many, many lives saved as those lunatics opened fire on the stage, Muslim. The things that get overlooked. Hey, never mind. Should punish the innocent in order to somehow feel better about the crimes of the guilty. And when they kill themselves in the commission of those crimes, does it leave a sort of impotence? Almost a state-based impotence. For us, we've got to do something. We can't do anything. He's dead. He died at the scene. We've got to do something. Well, let's ban swimsuits. Really? Really? And then it's been passed upstairs in France, this story. It's been passed upstairs to a tribunal that effectively opens the door towards this sort of instruction being enforced everywhere in the country. There was a challenge to the ban by human rights groups, and it was rejected. The right-wing mayor of Nice said that such clothing was unwelcome at a time when France was a target for Islamic State terrorism, making this middle-aged woman take off a tunic on a beach in Nice apparently makes French people safer. Really? Now, and I wouldn't like the law any more than I like the veil, or I like the sense that women feel they should cover themselves up. I don't like it. I like freedom more than I dislike these practices. If they were ordering everybody else to take off full body coverings on this beach, it would at least have the consistency of law. It would not be one law for you according to your religion and another law for everybody else. You would have a nun. I mean, how would you feel if a nun at gunpoint was told to take off her habit? Sister Mary Frances was my headmistress when I was 6 years old. I would find that so outrageous. So absolutely outrageous that Sister Mary Frances would be told to take off her habit when she took us on a school trip to Abu Dhabi in Wales. And to be honest, it was raining, so it was unlikely that anyone was going to sunbathe. But still, the principle would stand. What if nuns turned up? If you follow my Twitter feed, you can see a picture of a couple of nuns on a beach in the south of France. What would happen if they were told? How would you feel, hand on heart, if nuns were being told in France to take off their habits on beaches? And I think for the French justification of this to hold true, they'd have to do that as well. You couldn't go after the scuba divers because they're not dressed as scuba divers for, quotes, religious reasons. You couldn't go after the skin cancer sufferers because they haven't covered their skin from head to toe for, quotes, religious reasons. But you'd have to go after the nuns, wouldn't you? If a nun turned up on a beach in the south of France, how would you feel if she was ordered at gunpoint to take off her habit? And unless you're comfortable with that, you can't really be comfortable with what's happening. 0345 6060973. Just against the backdrop of everything this hour, I want you to remember, because it's important, you now live in a country where it's controversial to suggest that innocent people shouldn't be punished when guilty people commit crimes. Well, that's what we've let them do to us. It's what we've let the terrorists do to us, and that's what we've let their similarly radicalised idiots on the far right do to us. We've been turned into a country where it's controversial to contend that innocent people shouldn't be punished for the crimes of guilty people. Because this woman on this beach in Nice is being punished, and she is being punished for the crimes of the killer. There's no attempt to pretend otherwise. The mayor of Nice has said that it's unwelcome to dress like this at a time when France is a target for terrorism. It's astonishing. Is there any other explanation that for you carries a little bit of intellectual weight other than it's designed to make life worse for Muslims, for some Muslim women, because that'll make everybody else feel better? It doesn't make me feel better. It made some people on the beach feel better. They started shouting, "Go home," and clapping as this middle-aged woman was forced to take her clothes off. What's actually worse? You go to Saudi Arabia, you'd be forced by armed police to put your clothes on, wouldn't you? You'd face arrest in Saudi Arabia or Iran, I think, for displaying flesh. We here in the West, where we protect our values and our freedoms, would be absolutely and rightly disgusted by that. They do what? Yeah, they've got moral police, you know. Moral police in these Arab countries, actual moral soldiers. And guess what it said on the ticket that was given to this woman in France? It used the word moral. Morality. Police going around enforcing morality. How does fundamentalist Islamist terrorism that's designed to take away all of our freedoms? They hate our freedoms. They hate our liberties. They hate our democracies. They hate all the things. Well, I suppose some people in this country hate it as well. Liberals. That's become a dirty word. They hate all of these things. And now we're turning into them by, at gunpoint, telling women what they can and can't wear. How has that happened? 0345 60973 is the number that you need. Okay, it's 10:13. I'm going to open up the phone lines. I want you to pile in on this. I don't want to have a sort of shouting match about whether or not it's reasonable to punish innocent people. I'm afraid you're never going to change my mind on that. And I'll tell you why. It's a very selfish reason that some people are apparently too stupid to see. I am innocent of all these crimes. If you open the door to punishing people who are innocent of these crimes in order to somehow score a retrospective point against the guilty, you open the door to you being punished one day for things you've had nothing to do with. It's a simple matter of law. It's why the phrase human rights, however traduced it may be, is so powerful. It protects all humans, and sometimes it means you have to give a free pass to someone you'd much rather bang up or chuck out of the country. But in order to protect yourself and your children, you have to get behind human rights legislation, unless you're not a human. Unless you're not a human. So when you look at this story, if you do feel a degree of satisfaction or happiness, I don't understand why, unless it is somehow born of hatred. Why would you want this woman to be forced at gunpoint to take her clothes off? Because it minimises the risk of a terror attack. Well, that's not even worth examining, is it? That's so fatuous, it doesn't even merit scrutiny. What other possible reason could it be? Why would people clap? Unless they're just so conditioned now, so radicalised to hate, that the terrorists' work is done. It's 10:14. Phone lines are open. I'll talk to Sarah in Stockholm first after the travel news. After Sarah, it could be you. This is, I mean, really, you can say, oh, it's right, I'm glad they're doing it, we should do it here. But then you have to explain why nuns would be exempt from it. 0345 6060973. Why would anybody want to live in a country where armed police get to tell you what you can and can't wear in a public place? That's the question. So, I mean, it might not be quite the question you're expecting to answer, but if you like this idea, just tell me why you want to live in a country where armed police tell women, not men, what they can and can't wear. And while we're at it, how come the coppers are allowed to wear long trousers on this beach? You know, there's another picture on my Twitter feed. You can go and have a look now at Mr. James OB. It's a police officer with a tape measure measuring the legs of a woman in a swimsuit. That was only less than 100 years ago. I think it was in America. It might have been somewhere else. Using a tape measure to measure how much flesh a woman in a swimsuit has got exposed. And guess what? If there was too much flesh exposed, she had to change her garment. She had to go and put on something that covered more flesh. Now, how would you even describe that volte-face? Now, you've got police officers on a beach in France with guns telling women that they're covering up too much flesh and they've got to take off their clothes so that more flesh is on display. We've gone mad, actually. That's it. It's over. This is it. It's the end of freedom. It's the end of liberal democracy. It's exactly what the terrorists want. And there are so many people who think they're opposed to the terrorists who are cheering it. That's the real tragedy here. People too stupid and too blinkered and too full of hate to see they're on the same side. In a war against freedom, If you like this, you're on the same side as the terrorists. In a war against liberty, if you like the idea of armed officers holding guns while telling women what they can and can't wear, you're on the same side as Islamic State. If you are in any way in favour of this sort of idea, then you are a hell of a lot closer to the religious police in Iran and Saudi Arabia than you will ever be to me and what used to be true of my country. You're on the same side as the terrorists, if you like this, in the war against freedom and Western values. Can't get past that simple observation. If you're in favour of armed police telling women what they can and can't wear in a public place, then you are closer to the religious police in Iran and Saudi Arabia than you are to me. You're also closer to some French resorts now. What the hell is happening to our values? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. Richie wants to know, are you hosting this show naked, James? Richie, I'm not only hosting this show naked, I'm hosting it while sitting on the floor because the studio is so full. It's ram-packed. Sarah is in Stockholm. Sarah, what would you like to say?
Hello. I'm not going to try and defend it at all. It's clearly ludicrous. But there is a legal background to how this law has been brought in that isn't being widely reported in the UK. There's a constitutional concept in French law, which is called laïcité, which bans the ostentatious display of religious symbols in public life. It's generally been restricted to schools and to universities, but in theory it applies to anywhere where the politicians or the police feel like the secular values of French political society are being challenged.
I mean, to be fair, it has been fairly widely reported and fairly widely explained. Indeed, the ticket that was given to this woman who was wearing a sky blue tunic in order to take it off it contained reference to that. It was both a morality and a threat to secularity as well. But that would involve, and I'm not au fait with France to a sufficient degree to know whether people are ever ordered to remove yarmulkes, are they, or crucifixes?
Yeah, certainly.
On beaches.
When I went to... I don't know about beaches.
Well, it's important, isn't it? So can I wear a crucifix on a beach?
As far as I know, this is the first time that it's really been brought...
So I can still wear a crucifix on a beach?
Yeah.
Because I mean, maybe I'm being a little bit obtuse, but I see a crucifix as a hell of a lot closer to the description you deploy of religious insignia than I do a sky blue tunic.
And I agree. I know that when I was at university, I was asked to remove, I was wearing a crucifix and I was told to take it off before I went into class. And I know that a Jewish friend also wasn't able to wear a yarmulke. But again, that was within the school system. And
it would apply equally to everybody?
Yes.
So if someone turned up on this beach in France wearing a yarmulke, hand on heart, Sarah, do you think it's likely that armed police would tell him to remove it?
Very, very unlikely.
Which is why this is such a gross attack upon Western liberties and freedoms.
It is, absolutely, but this laïcité idea is being used as sort of an intellectual defence.
Well, it is by you. I mean, to be fair, the mayor of Nice doesn't even have the intellectual wherewithal to try to do that. He simply says the clothing is unwelcome at a time when France is a target for terrorism. So because that monstrous individual who drove his truck up the promenade in Nice, this woman wearing I think it's turquoise actually rather than sky blue, this woman wearing a turquoise tunic on a beach is ordered to disrobe by a man with a gun. Just make sense of that for me if you can.
I don't honestly think anybody can they?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I mean, they must be able to. Some people must be able to. Some people cheer it. Some people welcome it. Because a murderer killed lots of people, including Muslims, a Muslim woman is ordered to take off her turquoise T-shirt on a beach by a man with a gun. You put it like that, Sarah's probably right. There is no argument. 0345 606 0973. In fact, I'll probably have to open the box of trolls to find one, won't I? Here's one. Here you go. Nuns don't go around blowing people up. It's possible you could have missed the point more spectacularly, but I'm not entirely sure how at this point in proceedings, nor does this woman in a turquoise T-shirt. You complete lemon. It's 24 minutes after 10. Phone lines are open, but let's go. 0345 606 0973. How can a woman in a turquoise T-shirt being ordered to remove it by a man at gunpoint make French people feel less safe from terrorism? Omar is in Wembley. Omar, what would you like to say?
Yeah, I wanted to actually just look at it there's two aspects here. One, I think, is that the reason why they're probably doing it in France is that we talk about, Islamist sort of militancy, but I think there's also a secular type of militancy as well, where probably they're feeling that, look, our sort of liberal values of taking, your clothes off are not working ideologically, so we have to therefore force you. And it's almost like, forcing people to abide by this quote-unquote morality that's being, propagated.
Like what they do in so many Muslim countries, but they do it the other way around. They force you to cover up.
Exactly.
So we're turning into them, just backwards.
Exactly, and I would agree with you. The other aspect is, which I think if we bring it more close to home, we're probably, I can see that you're disgusted about how this is going, but if we look at it closer to home, which is the whole theme of punishing innocent people for the actions of others. That's actually happening now here in the UK.
Oh, I know it is, mate. So I absolutely agree with you on that. Of course it is. You've got to open up social media to see people calling for everybody who subscribes to the same religion as a terrorist to be treated as a criminal, even though they're victims. It's what I find so astonishing. Woman in a headscarf goes under, one of the first people to go under the wheels of that truck in Nice, and yet somehow she should be held responsible for the actions of the man that did it. Brother of the police officer who was there, killed by the Charlie Hebdo killers, Muslim. The security guard at the Bataclan Theatre, not killed by terrorists, saved people from the terrorist, Muslim, and yet they should also be held accountable for the actions of the terrorists. This is what I said on the morning after Nice, I think. Imagine if not only you were frightened of being the next victim, but you knew you were going to get the blame for it as well.
Yeah, sure. And I think on social media, obviously, individuals and so on, that's probably going to happen. But it's when also on a government level, which is, I think that's when it's scary. The governments which are there to protect, our freedoms, our liberal values, are there to enforce a sort of more like a draconian authoritarian type of rule where you're forced to take off your clothes, you're forced to not say anything.
It's the same as we said again. It's like Iran or Saudi Arabia when you're forced to do the opposite. You're forced to put your clothes on. We're just playing or the French police, the French authorities in this case, are playing exactly the same game. You wonder how we sit here wondering how young Muslim people get radicalised. Well, this is how old Westerners get radicalised. Old people who probably describe themselves as Christians or as atheists. Old atheists get radicalised. You have to have a degree of radicalisation to be in favour of armed officers telling women what they can and can't wear. It's quite incredible. And I like the notion of a kind of fundamentalist secularism as well, allowing that pendulum to swing too far. Morally, morally the right word? If nuns were ordered to remove their habits on French beaches, there would be a consistency here. It would insulate the practice from discrimination. It would just be women that were being discriminated against rather than merely Muslim women. But they're not. It's actually incredible when you think about it. Liberty, fraternity, equality. There's no equality here. There's very little liberty. Well, there's no liberty at all. And there's precious little fraternity. But armed police, I'm sorry to labour the point. You go to Iran or Saudi, I'm told that there will be religious police who tell you what you can and can't do. They're the ones who make sure you haven't got alcohol in the boot of your car if you're a Westerner. They're the ones who make sure that you're properly covered, properly modest when you go out in public. They're the ones who will arrest you if you're a woman and you've got the audacity to drive a car. I find that barbaric. I find that absolutely hateful. And yet you hop over the channel and you've got essentially moral police telling middle-aged women in turquoise T-shirts to take them off because it's covering up too much skin. She wasn't even wearing one of these garments, one of these full-body swimsuits. She was wearing leggings and a turquoise tunic. And some people in this country like it. They like the idea of armed police telling women what they can and can't wear. I don't know, we stay with this for 10 years, whether we'd actually begin to see each other's point of view. If you're in favour of moral police telling women what they can and can't wear, I believe the tactic of the far right at this point is to say, why don't you move to Saudi Arabia then? Seriously, if you like this sort of thing, go and live in Saudi, go and live in Iran. The French police are doing what the religious police in Iran do. It's just that they're making women uncover, and in Iran, they make them cover. I'll tell you what, tell me what the difference is on 0345 6060 973. State-appointed moral arbiters telling women what they can and can't wear. What's the difference between the religious police in Iran telling women to cover up and the secular police in France telling women to take their clothes off? Or else. What is the difference between religious police in Iran ordering a woman to cover up and secular police in France ordering a woman not to? 0345 6060 973. Sienna is in Croydon. Sienna, what would you like to say?
Hi. Hi. So I believe what you're saying is true, but the thing is that what I believe is that I think it's an intimidation for the fact with putting the lady that she should be like told to go. She should be told to like go into a cubicle or something and get changed, not done in the public. But I do believe that.
So you're comfortable with armed police telling women what they can and can't wear?
No, I'm not comfortable. That's what I'm saying. That she should go elsewhere, not in a public with armed police telling her to change right in front of the public.
So they should take her into a cubicle and tell her what she can and can't wear.
Yeah, I think that's more reliable. And because the fact that she knows that there's terrorism happening around the area, like in the place that she is in, so it's like she's parading for it, especially wearing like a bright blue tunic, as you keep saying.
So say that again. She's doing what by wearing a turquoise tunic?
She has no respect, basically. She knows that there's terrorism happening around in the country.
Yes.
And it's like she's like
How does a turquoise tunic display a lack of respect for the victims of terrorism, many of whom, of course, were Muslims?
Well, I believe that's because she's all like covered from head to toe, and it's like wearing leggings and wearing.
What are you wearing at the moment, if you don't mind me asking?
Shorts and a top.
Are you showing? Are you showing a lack of respect for anyone by wearing shorts and a top? Because there are countries in this world where you'd be ordered to cover up. Would you be comfortable with that? Because you're showing a lack of respect for their morals or their sensibilities.
But that's what I'm saying. If that's their belief in their country, then they should do it in their own country. If France doesn't like the fact that they covered up too much, then they should like respect.
Can I ask you a slightly rude question?
Yeah, that's fine.
Do you think you're making sense?
Yeah, I do.
You really do? So they should have taken her into a cubicle and ordered her to get undressed there. That would have been okay. But you've got a problem with it happening on a beach.
Yeah, because it's in a public.
Yeah.
For everyone.
Yeah. Who's allowed to tell you what to wear?
Well, as I said to you, there's rules and regulations with countries and stuff. Like if I was to go to...
Yeah, but I mean, you live in a Western democracy, and so did this woman until about a month ago. So who's allowed to tell you what to wear? It's the Islamic State supporters that want to live in societies where women are told what to wear by the authorities.
Yeah.
So who's allowed to tell you?
I don't think anyone, unless I'm going to the country and being told.
Surely it's all right if I do it in a cubicle, isn't it? As long as I take you into a cubicle and tell you what you can and can't wear, that's fine, remember, under your analysis. Zena's in Ealing. Zena, what's going on?
Hi, well said. You should have said to her, how would she have felt if somebody...
No, it didn't went in one ear, out the other. In one ear, out the other. Well, it made the blindest bit of difference.
Saudi Arabia had put a gun to her head and said, unless you wear an abaya, I'm going to pull this trigger. Because there are countries, but when Westerners go to Dubai, no one puts a gun to their head and says, can you please put more clothes on? Anyway, the problem is, it's not just whether, wearing a burkini and you're putting a gun, to our heads, but it's the after effect. So I was in a shopping mall here and I wear a scarf. And when I walked into one of the rails and I was said, oh, look, we're being attacked. And it was straight after, all of this had happened within the last month. And so I went up to her and I said, excuse me, did you just say we are being attacked? And then she just looked at me and said, oh, no. And then I walked off and she repeated the same sentence again. And my daughter was with me, who's 9. And I turned around and I said, sorry, did you just say that again? And then she said, no. Then I walked off and I heard her say, well, yeah, I did. What's she going to do about it? And I wasn't going to put a fight, in front of my daughter because, that's just not right, or in public. But she obviously wanted me, to, fight back.
Can you understand, not so much the last caller, but the mayor of Nice, who says that this rule has to come in after the terror attacks? Because, I guess if it was some sort of, like a dark, the bikini, the actual single full body swimsuit and it had that kind of almost that sub Star Wars type sinister appearance, you could say, well, don't wear that because that does a display association. But she's wearing a turquoise tunic. I'm trying so hard to find some sort of...
What's the difference to
I don't know.
the diver suits? What's the difference to a wetsuit? Because there are some wetsuits that we were having a discussion yesterday. There are wetsuits that also have a cover up to the head. So how are you going to distinguish a Muslim wearing it to, say, a Christian or a Jewish person wearing it?
Well, this is the interesting thing, because I mean, the Brains Trust are saying things like, when in Rome, do as the Romans do. What, throw Christians to lions? The rules are clear before you go to different countries. But the whole point is they're not. What would have happened if this woman had said, no, it's all right, I'm not a Muslim. I just really like turquoise tunics.
And exactly, and what if it was because, like, of a medical issue because of her skin? Because, like you I'm sure you see in the shop, they're the same style is sold to kids so that the sun doesn't come onto their skin. What's the difference there? And there are adults that wear it for those reasons as well. I think it's absolutely disgusting. And the problem is now when we travel, I find it really hard to wear a burkini because the looks are all on me.
What do you do instead?
Well, I don't. I mean, I've been wearing it. We just went to Turkey and I wore it.
You'll be all right there. Italy's but benefiting apparently from the French bans. A lot of Muslim families are travelling to Italy. Can I? I'm not going to lie to you. I don't like the notion of a one-piece swimsuit. But to be honest, that's neither here nor there. It's entirely up to you what you wear and what you don't wear.
Neither do we. But that's all there is that we can wear, so that we can actually swim.
Why? Why can't you go swimming in a normal swimsuit?
Because it's in our religion, you have to cover up. You're not supposed to show any flesh.
And yet, plenty of Muslim women do. I mean, it is a freedom of choice. There's no scriptural insistence on that any more than there is for the face veil. So you do choose to do it. I don't quite understand why. What would happen if you didn't?
Well, there is, but that's just saying, like, why do some people go to church? Why not? Obviously, it isn't the Quran, and we do have to abide by it. But there are some Muslims who are very strict and some that aren't. So some wear it, some don't. And there are some who are in the middle who, try and follow religion, but at the same time try and fit in with society. Who, I wear a hat with it, for example, just so that it looks a bit more normal. But even then I get looked at, even with just, with a big hat that's covered for my hair, for example. But it's looked at, 10 years ago when I used to wear it, nobody used to say a thing. Absolutely no one. But in the last year, it's been because of the media and because of what's happening and what's going on. It's that extra emphasis on it. But no one ever said anything to us 10 years ago when I used to wear it.
Well, I mean, it has to be pointed out, I suppose September the 11th had happened, but Islamist terrorism didn't feel quite as immediate, and certainly in France they wouldn't have been touched by it on anything like the same scale. But that is the problem here, is that some deeply evil people claiming to be, or believing on some level to be, acting in a religious way, to be somehow serving their religion of Islam, the same religion that you subscribe to, although a completely different interpretation of it. They do something awful, and people like you need to be punished.
Exactly. It absolutely. I've lived in England for 35 years, and I went to a Catholic school, and I wore a scarf in a Catholic school, and I never ever felt it. Went to British universities, never felt it. But in this last year, I really have felt it when I travel. Felt it when going around, just the looks, the back chat, and it's quite sad that it's happened. But these Islamic terrorists have got what they wanted.
They have, except people will struggle to accept. Well, people cheering the ban, people who've read a few things on the EDR website and think that they're Quranic scholars, they'll be all over this. They'll love it because they've been radicalised. It is the horseshoe again. You've got the extremists on both sides who now both favour authorities, state-sanctioned authorities. They're not actually called the religious police in France. They're called the opposite. You could call them the irreligious police. In Iran, Saudi Arabia, they're actually called the religious police. State-appointed arbiters of morality, marching up and down beaches telling women what they can and can't wear. Outraged when it happens in Middle Eastern countries. We accept that if we want to work there, do business there, we've got to abide by certain rules. But as members of Western liberal democracies, we reserve the right to describe those rules as barbaric, as medieval, as wrong. Now they're in France, and it's partly our fault. Daryl's in Hertford. Daryl, what would you like to say?
Hi, James. Yeah, I'm a worried man actually. 43 years old, and I've seen all of the old footage of the early days of the Nazis and their treatment of what they viewed as a subclass.
Yeah.
And I think we're seeing history repeating itself.
Was it? Is that the right word?
Well, this is what I've yeah, so basically, I thought, how can a population, you know, basically almost condone and support this? And you see how you just sleepwalk into these nightmares.
Remember that poster that we had up, the UKIP poster that went up before the referendum, that was pretty much a complete rip-off of Nazi propaganda. The Breaking Point poster. We do sleepwalk into it.
Well, you know, the murderer who drove the lorry, whatever faith he purported to be or whatever he was supposed to be, was just a maniac in a lorry. He was a murderer.
Can't disassociated entirely from jihad or Islam or whatever word you want to use. He was a repressed homosexual, which appeared to have at least as much to do with his turning to the dark side as anything else did, and that would be linked to his religion as well, because if he hadn't been born into the Islamic faith, then he presumably wouldn't have had such a psychodrama and self-loathing about his own sexuality. But it's the fact that one of the first women to go under the wheels of that truck was wearing a headscarf that is the point at which I despair at other people's reactions. She should also not only be a victim of this attack, she should also somehow bear the blame for it. That's the logic that we're hearing in our own country now.
I don't know if there's a bigger plan, if they're scaring people into a society of more and more control. It seems to be that people can phone up the radio and honestly think it's okay for an armed officer to go on a beach and ask a woman to remove an item of clothing, and people are saying it's okay because that's the law. How ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I can't comprehend it.
Well, that's Britain.
If they made a law that said everyone's got to go up to the 4th floor and jump off, what are they going to say? Well, I'm not going to disobey the law, I'm going to jump off. It's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I don't know where the line would be, actually. I suspect for a lot of these headbangers, it would be if it was their wife or daughter who was being told by armed police what they can and can't wear. That's when the penny would drop, but by then it would be too late.